at home or at work. Listen online at CKNW.com. This is the World Today weekend on CKNW News Talk 980. Once again, here's Sean Leslie.
Well, the third session of the 40th Parliament paused for its summer break this week, so now your MPs are hitting the barbecue circuit, while, of course, Prime Minister Stephen Harper readies himself for next week's G8 and G20 summits in Ontario. Later on, we'll hear from Liberal MP Keith Martin and New Democrat Finn Donnelly. Right now, pleased to be joined by James Moore, Canada's Minister of Heritage and Official Languages, and, of course, the MP for Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. James, how are you today?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
You get to loaf and goof off for the next 3 months, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. Please. No, actually, it'll be a very busy summer for myself. There's a lot to do. As you know, there's G8, G20, then we have a royal visit coming. The Queen is going to be here visiting 4 provinces over 6 days, and as Minister of Heritage, I have the honor of hosting her, so I've got plenty on my plate, that's for sure.
I know. G8, G20 summits, James, got to put this to you, $1 billion worth of security. Toronto Star works that out with nearly $1 million a minute. How can that be worth it from the perspective of a Canadian taxpayer, James?
Well, obviously, it's not $1 million per minute. That's a cute way of categorizing it because the summits take place over a certain number of days, but it's obviously months of preparing. We're hosting the G8 is actually more countries than that, and the G20 is more countries than that, but there are more than twice as many delegates coming to the city of Toronto than there were athletes in the 2010 Olympics. Frankly, it costs what it costs. These are the leaders of the world who are going to be assembling in a city. There are serious security threats after 9/11. All security threats, of course, have been raised to the roof, and it costs what it costs. Anybody who thinks that this is some spending spree on behalf of the government is wrong, and it's we try to do these things as efficiently and as effectively as possible. We are hosting the world. There will be plenty of opportunity for people to look at the summit and to decide after the fact whether or not they think it was worthwhile. But I think it's worthwhile. Then Canada is a centerpiece on the international stage, and this is a great year for Canada to be talking about all the great things that we have done at home on the international stage. I mean, we have robust economic growth. We're leading the world. The Economist magazine says that we're an economic star. More than 74% of the jobs that we lost in the recession that's happened over the last couple of years have been recovered. We're going in a great direction. I think we have a great story to tell, and the G8 and G20 summits will be a great platform for us to tell our story.
Well, nobody wants a security incident, obviously, James Moore. Why not hold it somewhere other than downtown Toronto, though? Doesn't holding it in an urban area make it that much harder to secure and therefore drive up the bill?
Not necessarily, because if you hold it in other places, there are other costs that come associated with it as well, such as getting media in and out, getting all the delegations in and out, the ability to have, enough hotel rooms in certain places. So, I mean, there are costs wherever you are. And this is absolutely, by the way, in line with what the security costs have been for G8, G20 summits over the past few years. There's nothing abnormal about the cost of this. This is within the realm, and of course it's expensive. We wish we were spending this money on other things. Of course we would like to be, for example, I'd like to, have this money being spent in British Columbia so we could, for example, power through and get the Evergreen line done into my community. There are other projects where you would love to have these kinds of funds available for, but, Canada is a world leader, and we need to have a seat at the table. We need to be doing our part to host these international events. By the way, we don't volunteer to host these events. These happen on a rotational basis. It's our turn to host this event, and we're doing it as best as we can to make sure the taxpayers' money is going to be respected.
Yeah, all right, but you're saying it costs what it costs. I just, does anyone look at it afterwards and go through the receipts and give us an accounting, or is it all secret, hush-hush RCMP stuff? We can't tell you what we spend it on because it would violate security. It just seems to me it's an area that, it's got the potential for a waste of money here because it's sort of happening secretly.
Yeah, well, security costs are sort of secret on the front end, in part because by getting into the details of what kind of security, what kind of manpower, what kind of dynamics are in place, obviously there's a security. But after the fact, of course there is. There'll be plenty of opportunity for people to talk about what the money was spent on and why. But you notice, by the way, that people just talk in Ottawa, Liberals and Democrats just talk about this macro price tag, and they say, "Oh my God, it's $1 billion," and they use catchphrases like yours there about it's $1 million for every few minutes. But nobody's actually come forward and said that they disagree with security experts who have said this is what it costs. There's no serious security expert, not one, who has gone on the record and said this is out of whack. All of them have said, yeah, this is about what it costs. When you're hosting the world in a summit like this, as large as this, in a city as this, as important as this, with the security threats that we face, yeah, it is kind of important. Don't forget, by the way, that there are people who are right now before the courts who were from the Toronto area who were caught with 3 times the amount of ammonium nitrate that was used in Oklahoma City, and they were going to blow up Parliament Hill Center Block just a couple of years ago. There are threats. They are here, and we need to take them seriously. And so when people just sort of slough them off, they ought not do that. The security experts say this is what it costs, and we listen to those security experts. We don't listen to Libby Davies.
280-9898. I do welcome your calls to James Moore, and the other MPs will be joining us later on during the program. Star 9898 on your cell phone. Paul's on the line. Hi, Paul.
Well, hey there. I just wanted to ask JM what he thinks about simply using Skype to hold the meetings.
All right, JM, go for it. Why not just Skype? Why not Obama and Harper and everybody else on Skype or Twitter or something?
Well, Skype works, Twitter works, but I don't think it's quite has the same level of effectiveness and sincerity in these kinds of meetings. So believe me, I'm sure there'll be plenty of technological advances, but I don't think that Skype quite gets the job done. But
do they accomplish anything with these Gab fests? You know, I mean, it's nice for them all to be able to get together, James, but really, do they accomplish anything? Do we need to keep having these summits?
Well, they do, and you know, for example. John Manley, Paul Martin, former finance ministers, it would be very easy for them to come out and say, you know what, I've been to these things, and they're a waste of time, and the Conservatives are wasting money, and this shouldn't happen. And as someone who's been in the room and been at those meetings, I think these things need to stop. Nobody has said that. There's no former leader of any political party at home or abroad who says that these things aren't worthwhile. Now, I'm not the Prime Minister or the Finance Minister. I'm not in the rooms in those talks. But everybody who has been says, yes, serious, substantive conversations happen. They do take place, and it is an opportunity for all countries to get together and to talk about a macro broader perspective about what needs to be done in order to shore up the international banking system, the international monetary dynamic, and to make sure that all countries are doing what they can. So, for example, you don't have one country like Greece, which is dragging down an entire continent's economy, that everybody is marching forward and doing their part to make sure that there's a global recovery to the economy and that everybody just isn't looking out for their own backyard. These things are critical, yeah.
All right, James, we only have a few moments left. I want to switch gears here and localize it a little bit. You know, one of the hot issues in BC is, of course, the harmonized sales tax, and the Campbell BC Liberals here are taking it on the chin over this. You guys, the Conservative government, you're the ones that offer the $1.6 billion in enticements for the province to do this, and yet you're still popular. People seem to not be holding this against you guys. Why not? How can you guys get to skate on the HST?
Well, we're not those who are imposing the HST, I suppose.
Oh, you sort of are.
Well, no, look, we have national legislation, and it's up to any province to decide whether or not they want to harmonize the HST. Quebec did it a long time ago. In the 1990s, under the Liberals, the Atlantic provinces harmonized their sales taxes. Ontario decided to harmonize their tax. British Columbia has decided to follow suit, in part because of the comparative pressures of Ontario doing it. The province of Manitoba, by the way, has decided not to put in place an HST.
Correct.
The province of Saskatchewan is making up their own mind. They may do an HST, but it's up to provinces to decide on their own whether or not they want to do it. And obviously, it's a debate, and everybody has their opinion on whether or not this was done effectively or appropriately by the provincial government. But that's a decision for the province of British Columbia. What we've done as a Conservative government is we made sure that if British Columbia decided to go forward with an HST, that we would get the same deal that Quebec got. That we would make sure that British Columbia got the same amount of compensation. You said $1.6 billion. That's not, we don't get anything for that as a federal government. It comes out of our overall fiscal frameworks. I mean, that's $1.6 billion lost to us. If Gordon Campbell decided, a year ago that he was not going to go ahead with an HST, that's $1.6 billion for us to apply to any other thing that we want to do, like debt reduction or spending on infrastructure. So the province of British Columbia decided, and we said, well, that's your choice, British Columbia.
You think it's a good tax? You think it's a good tax, the HST?
I think when you're doing public policy, you have to look at two things. One, is it good public policy? Number two, is the public on side, yes or not? And I think, obviously, I think the way that this was done leaves a lot to be desired.
James, got to leave it there. Thanks for your time, as always.
Thank you.
James Moore, Minister of Canadian Heritage and Official Languages, MP, Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. We will talk to, who are we talking to next? We're going to talk to Keith Martin, the MP, up next on CKNW News Talk 980.